Day 4, the Haggadah. Today we dive into the Magid, kind of the heart of the whole storytelling part of the Haggadah. The bread of affliction. The kind of our ancestors in Egypt in a hurry. So, all right, again, halachmania. Hold up the broken piece of the matzah of the Affliction. This is a bread of affliction, the kind of our ancestors ate in Egypt in a hurry, with no time to let it rise. It's dry, simple, humble, but it tells a story. And then you address the kids. What kind of bread is this? You're going to talk about the matzah and the story that they had about it. Why do we eat it for Passover? Because it didn't rise. Yes, but also it reminds us of those who are still hungry, still waiting, still hoping to be free. The Haggadah says, let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who need to come and celebrate. Now, I find that hypocritical because we're not actually inviting any homeless people or strangers into our homes. So I say, we say it tonight and we try to mean it in how we live and how we notice other people. And that's also a perfect tie-in for the Affliction, where the oldest child is going to hand back the broken piece of matzah into the DJ, the conductor of the Seder. And then we go into the Manishtana, the 4 questions. That's a classic kid favorite and all this. But I wanted to add something. Okay, there's the 4 things. Why is it different? And we all know that. Because we eat matzah, because we eat bitter herbs, because we dip our veggies twice, and because we eat reclined, okay? But I want to ask, what makes this feel new, different, or meaningful to you? And kind of go around the table, maybe Thanksgiving style, but whoever cooperates, whoever wants to share, what about it makes it meaningful for them will help them form a connection with this ceremony and ritual and make it meaningful for the coming days. So that's it. Now, the 4 sons we talked about, and I haven't touched this section. And I moved on to Dayenu, and I had a really long exchange with the AI about this because it's a tough one. It's a tough one to try to explain to kids what slavery is all about. It's difficult to make a differentiation between what slavery is and some of the rules and the strict regulations of childhood without being like too grotesque about it. It's tough. I had a lot of back and forth. Let me pull up the AI conversation about this bit for a second. This is from GPT. One thing I skipped over before we get into the Avadim section is wanting to weave the actual Exodus narrative, the storytelling, the Prince of Egypt aspect of it into the story. And my only concern is that it's getting a little too long, but I know that my kids love the story, the adventure, the heroism, all that, from baby Moses to the parting of the Red Sea. You know, we don't even go into the Mount Sinai and all that, but it's an epic story. And I was going back and forth. I was trying to kind of integrate it into the Magid, and I'm leaving this aside for a little bit. Like, maybe it's going to be just illustrations. Maybe it's going to, I want to weave the narrative somehow through it. But when I came to that conclusion, I went to Dayenu, and I just asked GPT a short intro, then reduce this version of the song maybe to 3 or 4 verses. I actually got it. Dayenu doesn't have verses. It's just a chorus. But it gives me the normal, it just gives me the normal text. Dayenu לפרעה במצרים. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and the Eternal brought us out of there with a mighty hand and an outreached arm. If the Holy One had not brought us to our ancestors out, then we and our children and grandchildren would still be enslaved to Pharaoh in Egypt. I don't like that. I don't know that it's true. I don't like that. And it's too God-centric. And I was still talking about adding the baby Moses in the basket thing, but I'm like, hold on, we got to talk about this slavery stuff. And first of all, I'm like, where's the song? Avadim Ainu Ainu. And it's like, no, the song is just a part of it, of the narrative text, of the verse. I said, forget the verse. I don't like the verse. Let's stick with the song, but we kind of have to explain, right? I said, hold on, let's delve a bit deeper on slavery. Forget the narrative for a second. It might not work well, even though it's really a fun story. Let's dig into what it means to see ourselves as slaves. Is there a question to ask everyone at the table to make them feel the weight of the oppression? So it came up with, what does it mean to be unfree? Who is still not free in the world, in our communities, in our hearts? Where are we still stuck in life? None of this resonated with me. None of this feels right about the slavery narrative. First of all, I said this is too heady for kids. And you just see how I struggled with this. And then he says, for kids, we can say we were slaves in Egypt, having no choice, being told what to do all the time, feeling stuck or small, not being listened to, being scared to speak. And when I was reading this list that it read to me, I'm like, this actually sounds a lot like being a kid, the way you're describing. So we need to further deconstruct, though, about to try to explain slavery. Someone else owns your time. Someone else controls your body. You don't get to say no. You work, but you don't get to rest. You live in fear because your life is not fully yours. Again, none of these hit a bell, and if anything, they remind you of childhood. Your description of slavery sounds a lot like being a kid. I wonder how we can make that distinction for them. And it gave me a few, how is being a kid not slavery? Kids are cared for, kids are protected, kids grow up and get more freedom, kids get to ask questions. But I felt like I'm getting nowhere with this. However, a Seder is not a Seder without the song. So I'm just like, give me the song and let's move on to the next can of worms, which is the 10 plagues. The 10 plagues is another problematic thing. Now, the good thing about it is that it's fun and easy to remember. It's very memorable. Get the 10, just counting anything is powerful. 10 plague, it's evocative, it's magic, it's D&D, it's hocus pocus. It's very D&D. It's like casting spells, basically, starting with the snakes. In a way, it's very non-Jewish in the way we normally think about. It's a very pagan way of demonstrating power in one way. And of course, the big elephant in the room is how much pain we've inflicted on other people. Culminating, of course, in the firstborn curse at the end, right? The Egyptians. And that is sitting forefront in my mind. I don't know. I showed my daughter The Prince of Egypt over the weekend. I remembered it being a pretty good telling of the narrative of the Exodus. It's interesting on a second watch now. It's got a bit more of a Christian tinge to it than I remembered. But one thing that they made there, and of course it's a pure fabrication. I mean, the whole thing might be fabrication, but they made Pharaoh Ramses they made him a lot more likable, basically. Like his motivations are very clear. His pain and his need of approval from Moses are very real in that movie. And so the pain that he suffers, especially, we don't know if it's true, but because I think the idea, the symmetry of the The firstborn curse is about that decree to throw all of the male firstborns into the river, into the Nile, at the beginning of Moses' story. So that is the symmetry of it, I think, theoretically, in the telling. And also, it has to be told because the whole holiday is named after the Holy Spirit descending in the Passover things that's passing over. It has to be told in a way. Uh, and the dipping ritual, which I also talk about hygienics a little bit because we used to just dip our fingers in our drinking cups. And I had a discussion with GPT about that. But it explains that the Haggadah says, okay, the dipping ritual is, we kind of, part of it is that we're removing some of the wine that we're drinking. We're taking a little bit of punishment to remember the suffering of the Egyptians. That's interesting, but first of all, it's literally a drop in the bucket. Second of all, it feels very hypocritical. Like this is something that was intentionally inflicted upon them from a very vengeful God in the telling in the Bible. And so what do we do with it? So I had a long exchange. I'm not going to share the whole exchange, but I said, before we list the plagues, we dip our fingers in the wine and let the drops fall for each one. Why? Not because we're sad about the plagues exactly, but because freedom is never bloodless. Because this story, like all stories of real change, is messy. People suffered. Innocence got caught in the crossfires of power and ego. Okay, this is a little too high language for kids, but the sentiment overall I think is okay. I like it. It wasn't all songs and miracles. So tonight we say the names out loud and let one drop fall for each. Not to erase the pain, not to claim the moral high ground, just to say this wasn't easy. The sacrifice mattered. Again, I'm not sure where I landed on this. I'm not 100% happy with this, but I also have to move on. I have a deadline. Done is better than perfect. I'm not going to rewrite all of Jewish tradition in the course of 2 weeks. So it's there. The decree is there. And we're going to use, if I can, I'm going to use little tiny shot glasses for hygiene. I'm just going to pour mini shot glasses because this came to my big next revisionist thing. Usually the second cup is you drink it at the end of the Magid. But the Magid is long. Actually, with my roadmap, it's going to be like a T shape because the Magid itself is almost as long as the rest of the Haggadah. So I'm like, hey, wouldn't it be nice to have a refresher in the middle of it? And I went back and forth in the liturgy a little bit. There is no real reason why we wait until the end of it to pour our second glass and drink it. So after this ritual here, after we talk about the pain, and before we go into Dayenu, which is a celebratory song, let's pour a second glass. Let's have a little prayer. Let's drink. Let's, moisten our throats a little bit so we can keep going. And now with a glass in hand, we can move on to the Dayenu. More than enough is how I decided to call it the Dayenu. Again, try to get the God a little bit out of it. It's about counting our blessings, basically. My dad always says, count your blessings. Well, you know what? I want to put that. I want explicitly in all caps. Count your blessings. That's what this is about. It's about gratitude. All right. It's about Thanksgiving. So this is great. I asked, it's a very long song, but it's a fun song. And it's a song that's very meaningful to us because we call my youngest son Forrest Dai Dai because Dai Dai means younger brother in Cantonese. And we always used to sing to him Dai Dayenu as a child and still sometimes today because, just because it's fun. So we want the song. I asked it to pick the 4 verses that are the most positive, less about vengeance, because there's verses about vengeance over there, and most about Thanksgiving, like real Thanksgiving. And this is what we ended up with. 4 verses I think is just right for singing. Shabbat. I'm a huge proponent of the Shabbat, so we're going to do Shabbat. We're going to do man, maybe. The manna, maybe. Actually, I'm not like the manna because then you have to explain what that is, and that's a whole other bag of hocus pocus, which is fun. But actually, this one, let me highlight this as I'm reviewing what I have here from yesterday and say maybe we'll go back and replace this manna thing because this Kilvano b'fnei har Sinai brought us to Sinai. This is, well, actually, this and the Torah are this also the same. So, all right, I'm rethinking here. I'm going to find some better verses. Like, the Torah is important. That's what makes us a people. I like it. But bringing us in front of Mount Sinai and giving us the Torah, kind of the same thing, isn't it? And then, of course, it forgot to give me the chorus, Dayenu, so I added it as well. And then I said, all right, this is more than enough, but GPT convinced me that Gamliel's short and sweet summary would be worth saying. And Gamliel used to say, so, short spiel. I'm going to just call it spiel. I like Gamliel's short spiel. Rabbi Gamliel used to say, anyone who doesn't explain these 3 things of the Seder hasn't fulfilled their obligation. So this is the bare minimum. Pesach, Matza, Maror. And I'm like, sure. Like, this is a nice summary at the end. Why not? It's fun. Gamliel sounds a little bit like Gamal, like camel. And so it can be a fun little illustration and a fun little summary. Say, look, actually, I'm going to put here a little note for myself. If you do nothing else, do this. This way, if people want a really, really short one, which I don't, but if they do in the future, this is your prescription over here. So that's about it. This is as far as we got to the end of the Magid, which is more than I was hoping for. And the plan going forward, I'm hoping, is this. I'm going to, if I can, finish the rest of this document tonight because it should be relatively straightforward. The rest of the Seder. And then tomorrow, which I have more free time, jump into the design again. And I know I'll be changing the text a little bit, but I want to start laying it out and seeing how it looks on a page and starting to generate those images with AI and turning it into a real thing. So if that's of interest to you, stay tuned. You can subscribe and come to see that. And I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.